You ever open your bank app after payday and feel both relieved and slightly betrayed? Like you just got paid. The number in your bank is smaller than you'd expected. Your roommate's getting a new TV, your friend's bragging about a raise, and somehow you're still deciding whether to cook or Uber. That's a familiar, quietly humiliating feeling for a lot of people in the US. You have a salary, but your life doesn't feel like the salary. You watch your 401k go up and down, you get a tiny company match email, and at the same time the landlord takes their chunk, student loan servicer takes theirs, and your insurance premiums quietly vanish from your paycheck. The arithmetic on your pay stub tells a different story from the one your job title made you expect. I'm Sam, and for years I thought the same thing, that a higher salary would magically solve the mismatch, that the ledger would line up if only the number on my business card got bigger. Turns out that's not how money works. There's a hidden architecture beneath every paycheck, a network of taxes, benefits, deferred pay, and incentives. And if you only look at the salary number, you're missing most of the story. There's a twist here. Your salary is both less than and more than your income, depending on what you mean by income. That contradiction is the whole point. Once you stop mistaking sticker price for what you actually control, doors open. Negotiation looks different. Budgeting looks different. Career moves, investment choices, even relationships about money shift. It's small math with big consequences. Stick with me. I'm not going to give you slogans. I'll walk through the math. The incentives bleeding cash or creating value behind the scenes. The psychological traps that keep people anchored to the headline salary, and the concrete things you can do to turn salary into real economic power, not just a number. You'll see how a $100,000 job can feel like $67,000 in your checking account and simultaneously be worth $112,000 when you count retirement savings and healthcare. That paradox is where most decisions go wrong. So let's start with what salary actually is. Picture this. Your offer letter says $100,000. You read it, you feel seen. You imagine a lifestyle. Then the first pay stub arrives and the number makes you blink. Why? Because the way the US labor market distributes compensation is layered. Employers split value across cash wages, benefits they pay on your behalf, deferred compensation you can't touch immediately, and tax treatments that bite different parts of that package at different times. That means there are at least 3 different incomes living inside one salary. The cash you get now, the value you receive through benefits or matching that you can't spend today, and the future value that lives inside tax-advantaged accounts or equity grants. Let me make this concrete. Imagine someone earning $100,000, that's the headline. But when they log into their bank on payday, they might see only about $67,000 over the year, after payroll taxes, federal and state withholding, and pre-tax deductions like 401k contributions and health premiums. So the cash flow available right now is closer to $67,000, not $100,000. That's the first cut. Now add the second layer, employer benefits. Your employer might be covering $6,000 a year in health insurance premiums and match $3,000 in retirement contributions. Those are real dollars the company spends for you. They don't hit your checking account, but they increase your economic well-being. So that $100,000 headline is actually buying you something more like $109,000 in combined cash equivalents and benefits. Then add the third layer, future value and tax treatment. The $3,000 match, invested and grown over decades, compounds into a much larger retirement balance. Tax-advantaged accounts change the present value of that money. Equity grants that vest over time can multiply if the company succeeds. So that headline salary actually has a latent future value that's invisible to your current bank balance. Why does the market do this? There are clear incentives. Employers can attract talent with generous benefits while keeping cash payroll lower. They prefer to have labor tied up in long-term incentives, vested equity, deferred comp, to reduce turnover. Tax code incentivizes certain structures. Healthcare, retirement contributions, and employer-sponsored benefits get preferential treatment because policymakers designed rules to encourage those behaviors. All of this shapes the packages you see and your perception of what you actually earned. Now here's the psychology. Humans anchor. We anchor hard to labels and round numbers. We see $100,000 and build a life story around it. We compare to friends and coworkers on that same nominal basis. Social media amplifies headline earnings. But our brains are poor at tracking multiple simultaneous value streams. Cash now, taxed differently. Benefits not liquid. Future value that depends on market returns. That's mental accounting. We put different money in different mental jars and treat them as non-fungible, even when economically they're fungible. The result is decisions that feel rational but leak value. So what matters? Liquidity, timing, and risk. Cash in your account lets you pay rent today. Employer match grows your retirement future. Deferred equity might be a lottery ticket dependent on company performance. Taxes are a faucet that opens and closes differently for each jar. Recognizing these distinctions changes what you negotiate for. If you're short on cash, a $5,000 signing bonus or higher immediate salary is worth more than a slightly higher long-term match. If your retirement is underfunded, maximizing tax advantage contributions is a different priority. Which brings me to the first deep move. Measure the real cash you control. Don't just accept the gross number. Break it into what hits your bank now and what's locked or future. When you do this, decisions like buying a car, signing a lease, or taking an unpaid sabbatical become clearer. The math isn't heroic, it's just honest. Now, once you've disentangled cash from deferred compensation, you face a second issue: the mismatch between where value exists and when you need it. For many Americans, the largest single mismatch is between big, lumpy expenses and steady, deferred benefits. Health emergencies, deposits, and housing require immediate cash. Yet employers often pay out their most expensive benefits in ways that are illiquid. Employer health premiums are great, but they don't help you cash a check to move into a new apartment. A 401k match compounds beautifully over time, but it won't bail you out when your transmission craps out. Let me tell you about a friend, call her Maya, who took a 15% pay cut to move to a company with an amazing equity package and generous employer-paid healthcare. For the first 2 years, she felt flush because office meals and snacks kept daily expenses down, and the thought of equity growth was intoxicating. Then her car needed repairs, and because a lot of her total compensation was tied to equity and pre-tax benefits, she had to raid high-interest credit to bridge the gap. She was basically trading guaranteed liquidity for upside she might never see. That's common. This is where system mechanics meet incentives. Companies design packages to align employees' interests with long-term company success. But the employee's life runs on shorter cycles: rent due monthly, student loans quarterly, kids, sports fees next week. The market equilibrium sometimes favors employers, not out of malice, but out of structural design. Employer contributions improve retention and foster long-term alignment, which investors like. Immediate salary increases are permanent cost to the employer. So negotiating for the former is easier for companies than the latter. Psychologically, humans discount the future steeply. We overvalue immediate consumption and underweight a future retirement that feels abstract. That's present bias. It's why many employees undercontribute to 401k plans unless nudged by default enrollment or employer matching. And it's why a raise that's mostly in deferred equity feels exciting but doesn't necessarily improve your daily life. Actionable takeaway: if you have lumpy near-term needs, ask for cash or a signing bonus. If you're secure today and think long-term, favor retirement match and equity. The point is not to prefer one universally. It's to align the structure of your compensation with the timing of your obligations and psychology. Let's pivot to taxes and the stealthy ways the IRS shapes what you can actually spend. Taxes are not just a flat bite. They are layered, they interact with benefits, and they change how much of that $100,000 you can deploy. Two people with identical gross pay can have wildly different take-home pay because of filing status, state taxes, pre-tax contributions, and credits. Here's a simple math walkthrough so you feel the squeeze. Pretend a $100,000 salary, single filer, with $6,000 going into a traditional 401k and $2,000 in pre-tax health premium deductions. Payroll taxes, Social Security and Medicare, take roughly 7.65% of gross, and your effective federal tax might be in the mid-teens after the standard deduction. State tax varies. When you run those numbers, and don't forget that 401k contributions reduce taxable income for federal income tax, but not for payroll taxes, you wind up with maybe $67,000 of cash in your checking account over the year. That's an approximation. But the point is, the headline is not what you can spend. Why does this matter beyond math? Because people plan lifestyles against gross numbers. They sign leases, buy cars, take loans, and make family decisions, as if the gross is the limit. Then reality says otherwise. This disconnect creates chronic money stress, even when earnings are healthy. The psychology is again anchoring plus optimism bias about future raises. We believe tomorrow's salary will cover today's overspend. There's also a governance element. Payroll systems withhold in certain ways that make taxes and benefits invisible. You don't feel Uncle Sam's bite the same way when it's sliced into payroll deductions over many pay periods as you do when you write a quarterly check. That invisibility dulls the pain and encourages spending. So here's what you do. Build a simple cash conversion spreadsheet. Start with gross pay, subtract payroll taxes, subtract realistic federal/state withholding, subtract recurring pre-tax deductions, and then what's left is your annual spendable income. Use that number to plan housing, car payments, and emergency fund sizing. Don't plan on future raises to close fundamental holes. Treat them as bonuses, not lifelines. Now let's talk about debt and fixed obligations. The things that silently convert nominal income into a thinner, higher stress reality. Student loans, mortgages, credit card minimums, and childcare are not just expenses. They're constraints that make certain parts of your compensation non-negotiable. Two people with the same salary can live completely different lives if one has $400 per month in student loans and the other has none. There's also a policy angle. Many student loan repayment programs in the U.S. are income-driven. They may reduce monthly payments but extend the term and increase lifetime interest. So a lower take-home pay today can trigger lower payments and, paradoxically, higher lifetime costs. Employers offering income at certain structures can interact with those programs in surprising ways. For instance, switching to a job with more deferred compensation could reduce calculated income and qualify you for different repayment plans, or push you out of eligibility for some forgiveness programs. The specifics are messy, but the principle is vivid. Legal and institutional frameworks transform salary into a complex object that affects your personal policy choices. Psychology here is survival versus optimization. Under high fixed costs, people make risk-averse decisions. They avoid entrepreneurship, delay investments, and accept poor job fits just to keep cash consistent. That's rational in survival mode, but it can trap people into suboptimal long-term paths. So what do? First, quantify your fixed obligations and treat them as non-negotiable in your planning. Second, when considering job changes, map how compensation structure will affect those obligations, not just headline salary. If you're on an income-driven repayment plan, a higher pre-tax retirement contribution could lower your taxable income and lower your monthly payments, which might be desirable. Third, where possible, reduce the fixed portion by refinancing or restructuring to gain optionality. Convert aggressive, high-interest debt into manageable terms. The math and the psychology need to be aligned. Reduce pressure so you can make better long-term choices. Next, fees, taxes on investments, and behavioral friction that quietly eat returns. This is where your salary isn't your income extends into your savings aren't your savings. You might save $10,000 a year in a taxable brokerage account, but fees, turnover, taxes on dividends, and poor allocation choices can shrink that in ways people don't intuit. Similarly, using employer stock purchase plans without diversification or taking company RSUs and immediately selling versus holding changes the risk profile. There's a structural trap. Employers sometimes put your long-term wealth in instruments they control, company stock, options, or deferred bonuses, which may align incentives but also concentrate risk. For instance, if your employer's valuation drops, both your job and a big chunk of your net worth could decline together. That's risk stacking. Your salary might be steady and your 401k growing, but large concentrated equity exposure could wipe out years of progress. Behavioral biases again show up. Loss aversion makes people hold losing positions too long. Optimism bias makes future returns feel more certain than they are. Inertia keeps fees embedded in plans because changing providers or funds requires effort. Every tiny friction, a 0.5% higher expense ratio on a fund, or a payroll provider's default investment option, compounds over decades. The result is that even people who do everything right can end up with much less than the arithmetic suggests. Actionable takeaways. Audit fees. Know what you're paying in expense ratios and advisory fees. Diversify away from employer stock beyond what's required. Use tax-aware strategies. Harvest losses when appropriate, and understand which accounts to prioritize for different asset classes. Most importantly, reduce friction. Automate rebalancing, set up reasonable defaults, and then check annually. Small habits and small fees have outsized long-term effects. Finally, there's the meta-level insight most people miss. Control is worth money. Liquid cash gives you freedom to leave a toxic job, fund career transitions, start a side business, or handle emergencies without predatory borrowing. Deferred compensation and benefits are valuable, but only up to the point they don't undermine your flexibility. That's the real trade-off you're negotiating every time you accept an offer with heavy non-cash elements. I'll leave you with a concrete framework you can use tonight. First, do the paycheck dissection. Write down gross pay, write down each deduction, taxes, 401k premiums, and compute annual take-home. Second, list employer-paid items and assign a present dollar equivalent. How much would you have to spend to replace that benefit? Health insurance premiums, retirement match, commuter subsidies, they have replacement cost. Third, map your fixed obligations and match them to cash flows. If your take-home doesn't cover fixed obligations, plus a reasonable emergency fund, prioritize cash compensation or sign-on bonuses. Fourth, audit your long-term holdings for concentration and fees. Fifth, choose your path, liquidity now versus long-term upside later. Be explicit about why you pick one. That's the math and the mindset. It's not sexy, but it's practical. Salary is a headline, not the ledger. Treat it like an ingredient, not the recipe. Once you see the architecture, you stop making choices that look rational based on the headline and incoherent in practice. If you've ever felt cheated by your pay, this is why. Not because employers are evil, but because the system, human psychology, and your life's timing collide. Learn to read the pay stub like a map instead of a badge, and you'll stop confusing status for solvency. Before I go, what if you tried one small experiment this month? Take your last 2 pay stubs, do the dissection I described, and then list the top 3 decisions you made in the last 6 months that were based on your gross salary. I promise that exercise will reveal one habit you can change immediately, maybe asking for a small signing bonus, or pausing a subscription, or increasing a payroll contribution for tax efficiency. Nothing dramatic, just a motion that nudges your actual control over your life. If this resonated, subscribe for more stuff like this. We'll keep demystifying the parts of personal finance that feel like arcane rituals. Also, drop a comment. What part of your compensation surprised you the most when you looked beyond the headline? I read every single one. Thanks for watching.